Oh, yeah.
We meet 4 times a year though, right?
Now,
And the last day was 5 minutes, so that's.
Yeah.
they used to meet much.
That's my kind of meeting, actually.
Yeah. Only 2 times
But those 2 times.
They make up for the
Seem
rest
right.
of the year.
a year. The grueling should probably read that.
Well, yeah, that's,
Oh, really?
all right. Call this meeting to order. This is the Tuesday, May the 3rd, special BET meeting. Notice the meeting was properly posted Thursday, April 28th. Item number 1, excuse me, discussion possible action regarding the minutes of the special meeting dated Tuesday, April 26th. We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, item 2, discussion possible action regarding department's amended FY 22-23 estimate of needs. Looks like we've got an amended drug court, mental health court fund, and Shine fund estimate of needs attached. My quick glance over all 3 was that they were just related to the revenue section. Is that correct? Okay. So page 2 or page 3, whatever that page is. So, is there any discussion on item 2? They're attached, so we don't need to receive them. Yeah, I think that'll be in the next item. Item 3, excuse me. Sorry, guys. Discussion possible action regarding follow-up questions related to any FY 22 estimate, 22-23 estimate of needs. We do have, I think, placed before everyone an updated estimate of needs for juvenile, both their detention and their bureau budget.
Motion to receive those.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, is juvenile here? Not here. Okay, I noticed that there was an email regarding this sent out about 10 or 15 minutes before the meeting. I did not have a chance to really delve into that email.
I can pull them up.
Well, do you know what the
What they changed?
The
what the
difference?
change
Yeah,
was and the purpose?
So on the previous ones they submitted, it was only the positions that were approved in the budget this year for the 15 detention officers and the intake specialists, but they didn't annualize the salary increases that were approved.
Right.
So this is increasing for what they will need for the whole coming year. Kind of
Okay.
annualizing the salary increases that was approved by the FCC and the budget board.
So it would be the number that Jamie had talked to us about and said she's gonna wait until September?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the total that they will need is this amount for detention. Yeah. To annualize what they got in this current budget year.
So does she now know that she is going to need that? Or, because at the time, she had said she wanted some more months to see.
Right, according to Danny, it was more accurate to do it like you always do it, to request it at this time and not have a new request in September. Because this is based on the April payroll coming, right? So,
I think the original one that they submitted didn't include
It did not.
a full representation
Right.
of what they could possibly need. So.
Okay. Well, we can have some more in-depth conversation on that, I guess, later. But to me, based on what she'd said before, those numbers, she was thinking that she was gonna be able to absorb a lot of that and maybe not have to ask. And so the estimate of need is, what do you think you're gonna need? I mean, so
Yeah, I
I'm
think-
curious to know whether she does now think she's gonna need that or
Well,
not.
based on April's payroll, according to Danny, that was not enough in their estimate of needs,
Right,
so.
but they're up and down traditionally on their, payroll. Okay. All right, any more discussion on juvenile or any other estimate of need that's been presented previously? I will say, while it's not necessarily an estimate of need, the jail presented, their numbers that they think they're gonna need to be funded, and then we push that into the, general fund, budget. I did get an email that the payroll numbers may actually go up. They're contemplating doing raises for all of their folks based upon Department of Corrections, I guess, increased pay. So they're looking at maybe doing pay raises, and if so, that number will go up. So I just got that email this morning, so I wanted to forward that along to everyone. I don't know what that number will potentially look like, but I'm hoping that somebody will come over and talk to us before a decision is maybe made, because I mean, I believe we had, now, who knows what September's gonna yield, but as of right now, we got $279,000 more than we had last year. And we have to fund the employer, insurance premiums at a higher rate than we had to last year, so. I don't know, but last time when this occurred, we weren't informed, and, you know, they said they were just gonna drop the number of employees down to compensate, but now it appears that they're asking for the full amount, the 400 plus, if they give raises, it'll be an amount on top of that. So everybody's in the loop.
I think the most recent estimate of these, they seemed to also look like it contemplated the lapse that was coming over as well, so the ask dropped a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So from the 41.7 down to 41 something, but
Yeah, it dropped, but not
the total budget.
the total, well, not even the total amount that they're estimating lapse, because they also had increases
Right.
down below, but that was not payroll. So this would be in addition to what the latest numbers they sent in were. So anyway, other than that, anybody have anything? Okay. Seeing none, let's go ahead. 4, 5, and 6 are kind of our catch-alls. So let's go ahead and move down to item 7. We can come back up to those if and when needed. Item 7, discussion possible action regarding the review of FY 22-23 department budgets, including the use of ARPA funding for eligible payroll and benefits. This item was was requested by Mr. Holmes. Brandon?
Yeah, so I just wanted to put an item on here, and I don't really know that this board can necessarily take action on this particular item, but I at least wanted to get the idea floating around, after we've spoken with the consultants, and looking at what we think might be eligible for revenue replacement or for an acceptable expenditure under the ARPA guidelines. And for example, for us, we obviously think that payroll and benefits is one of those things. So, so the reason that I wanted to put this on there is because I think there's two very specific options. Again, after looking through the guidelines and looking and speaking with the auditors, or I mean the consultants, option one would be, I think, that we budget like normal, and then of course we could use the ARPA money for payroll and benefits for our employees, for example. And then of course the appropriated general fund money at that point for salaries and benefits would just remain in the sheriff's office general fund, and then at the end of the fiscal year it would lapse back. So that money would be tied up and earmarked, I would imagine, in the sheriff's office budget. Option two would be the sheriff's office, and I'm only speaking for us. I think there's other eligible employees like juvenile detention employees and possibly even jail corrections employees. But the option two would be that we don't budget any for salaries and benefits out of our general fund, and then we could just set up a subcode in ARPA and we could pay for our salaries and benefits that way, which then in my mind would keep the money in the general fund. In the county general fund, not the sheriff's office general fund, so we're not having to wait till year end to wait for that money to lapse before it's usable. If they've got to hire a consultant, or if they've got to hire a architect for the jail building, or whatever the purpose of that money is going to be, it seems like it might be a little bit easier to choose option two rather than have that money tied up in department budgets. And then not to mention, if it's given to the jail trust initially, the money wouldn't come back. It doesn't lapse back. So I just wanted to really put that out there as a couple of options, and maybe seek direction from the board. I mean, I do have some updated estimates of need that stick all of our employees into a situation where they're paid for by ARPA money, because again, I fully believe that that's something that's doable. Obviously, we need to go to the Policy and Governance Committee for that to get a final blessing, but I kind of mentioned it during the last BET, and I just kind of wanted to bring it back formally that I think there's a couple of options to really consider. And since we're kind of at the midnight hour on the budget, I just wanted to bring it to the board, attention of the board. Any of that on that?
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, I heard Commissioner Calvi in the BOCC meeting say that the Board of County Commissioners is the governing entity of, or whatever, maybe misquoting that part of it, of the ARPA funds, right? Or the controlling entity, something like that. Last week in Budget Board, Commissioner Mond said that this is general fund and Budget Board control. So has that decision been formalized?
I think you said it perfectly. I think budget board is in control, and we report to budget board for general fund, but ARP
Right.
money is not.
So yeah, I don't know what Commissioner Mon, was referring to there. He may have been referring to, if he was referring to the $10 million that was the standard deduction, if you will, that the county could take as revenue loss. That moves it into the general fund column, and that would be in there for potential.
It's in the
budget.
ARP, in that same
But
meeting, they put it.
they put it
just
into an
created a
ARP
cost center.
fund.
It is still an ARP
Yeah.
funds.
So if it ever comes out of that ARP fund and goes into general fund, then budget board would be appropriating it. But the way the process has gone so far, while it's sitting in ARP, I don't know that there's been an official, this is how it's gonna happen, but I know that BOCC has Policy and Governance working the process with Accenture. So I guess,
Well, you all did the
You answered the
contract. The
question.
budget board did not do a contract with them, only you're
right,
allowed to do that. So I think it'd be helpful to know, based on what I hear Brandon say, is who gets what, if the sheriff wants to operate out of that ARPA fund, then that's a BOCC decision.
right,
But
so.
that affects the budget board over here saying,
Mhm.
well, and I'm just making up the number, let's say he's asking for 12 million, I forgot the line. But then that puts that 12 million over here for us, right?
Depending upon the timing of the decision. So
Right.
and that gets back to Brandon's option one or option two, it seems to me, if we were going with option two, what would need to happen based upon the current process is Policy and Governance would have to really quick make a recommendation to BOCC. I think the question of can salaries be paid for out of ARPA money is something that I would assume, and I hate to assume, but I would assume that's something that our consultant should be able to answer pretty quick. And if the answer, in that, it could be a differentiation based upon, which employees and where they are and whatnot. But if they can get an answer quick, then policy and governance make a recommendation, have a special meeting, have a recommendation, they go to BOCC. BOCC says yes or no, and if they say yes, then we know that money that they're wanting to spend that ARPA money on those salaries. So then we know when we're budgeting what we need to do, but we've got to know that pretty darn quick because we've got to have something before the end of May to budget board, so budget board can approve it and it can get out to the public and, have time for comment and all of that. But the
Clerk's office
process,
says so many days to publish. What's your deadline? Is it 45 or 30?
I think our goal is
We
the
have to
regular
publish
meeting of
5 days before the, public
Meeting.
hearing.
yeah, so our
Okay,
goal is
fine.
Yeah, I
that,
think it's.
And the
The
public
third
hearing
Thursday.
has to be
Right.
15 days prior, at least 15 days prior to the end of fiscal
We
year.
really need to
Yeah.
work towards the regular.
budget board meeting this
Mhm.
month, right?
Right.
So
Gotcha.
unless policy and governance speeds up the process, speeds up the timeline, then we can't assume that they're gonna do anything, so we've got to fund salaries. Yes, Christine?
I think they established a deadline at the last policy meeting,
And I think it was,
late May.
yeah, it was, well, late May and a BOCC meeting early June.
Right.
So, and that's why I'm saying that is outside of our timeline here. So unless they changed and sped up their process, then we're gonna have to look at the budget as if that possibility doesn't exist in my mind, to make sure that your employees are budgeted for salary. Then once that's set, it's set, and that money, at least my understanding is, would sit in those budgets until next fiscal year when they would lapse. I don't think we would have the opportunity to pull that money back out, absent a shortfall in revenue of the county, I believe is the way that statute is. So that money would sit there. So I don't know if we would need that money that we're saving and everything this year. If we do, then we're gonna need to consider that for this budget.
I mean, to Rick's point, I think there's two avenues that's gotta be taken to get to the final goal of whatever that happens to be. I mean, even if policy and governance approve it, but we still have to come back here and say, if this is the new sheriff's office general fund budget, so I think that.
But under their current timeline, that can't happen. If the current timeline stays the way it is, which is a recommendation being made by policy and governance late May, and it was late May, and then on BOCC early June, we're outside of that window. We will have already had to have made our recommendation to budget board, because budget board will have also had to have acted on determining what the budget is going to be for the next year prior to what those dates currently are.
Is there a way to, this would be extremely taboo, but is there any way to submit an estimate of needs contingent upon policy and governance approval or BOCC approval, or how would something like
It
that?
still would happen after. The budget board wouldn't know which one to approve.
Well, I mean, we could always, if it's a determination that, for instance, let's use your office as an example. If we're going to pull all of the sheriff's salaries and benefits out for ARPA, I mean, in our meeting here, we can do that on the fly because we have your estimate of needs. We know what that amount is. We just pull that down and notate it here on this sheet that's pulled up that the salaries were pulled out, and then put it on the note sheet. And I mean, I think we can do that. I don't necessarily know that another estimate of needs would have to be prepared. I mean, you could, but if we're in a time crunch,
Yeah.
I think we can do all of that on the fly.
Well, I've already done it just in case, so.
Okay.
Would any of that have any change with your request or your numbers that you submitted last time? Would change for the salary adjustment?
No.
The 2.1s or
Yeah,
whatever?
there'd be no intent to inflate it to go to ARPA. It'd be the exact same as the request, just everything moved to ARPA rather than the county's general fund. Yeah, it'd be a dollar for dollar, just a small amount. Yeah, because because obviously in 2 years or 3 years, whenever that runs out, we certainly won't put the county in mind that we don't think is sustainable, so.
Unless we make a recommendation, the budget board moves forward on your pay raises, then that could be shifted over there as well. Which, that being said, if that is done, and this may be on the procedures and protocols, but I wouldn't want us as policy and governance and BOCC is going through funding these things, these projects with ARPA money. I don't know whether we would use our current watch list or have a different list, probably a different list, but we'll need to be tracking these items in like 2 columns, one-time expenses and ongoing expenses. That way, as we're moving forward into future fiscal years and throughout the current fiscal year, we always have a track of these dollars that we're going to have to budget for later and not be surprised to where it's like, oh, now we can't use ARPA for this stuff. Now we got all these things that we would have been funding all along, plus these ongoing expenses for these projects that have been added. Can we afford that? So I think we'll need a tracking mechanism. But
And that's assuming that the second half of the ARPA money is given to the county, correct?
yeah, but I don't think there's any, I mean, I haven't read anything in that document that would indicate that.
No, it was
I
based
thought you
on,
had to kind of not reapply, but you had to show the need and all your reporting before you could have the second half.
Well, I think you have to, and I don't know if my understanding is, yeah, you have to stay in compliance with all your reporting requirements, but your first tranche is your first tranche and your second tranche is your second tranche. I don't think there's any stipulation beyond
I
that.
thought there was.
That's the consultant.
I could be.
Okay, now I will say, I've read the, however, 437 pages 3 or 4 times, and my eyes and my brain may be glossing over at the exact same point in the document every time, because it is not the most enjoyable read in the world, but I don't recall ever seeing anything like that. Do you? I know you've read it several times.
You have to be spending it. We haven't, I mean, the 12 months have passed. We could have been eligible for the second payment, but we hadn't used any of the initial payment. They're not gonna give you the second payment.
Yeah, it's not coming automatically.
Right, it's not coming automatically, but
Right.
it will come in.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna be penalized because we haven't done anything yet.
You say so.
That's just my, I mean,
Okay.
I could be wrong.
That's what the consultants told us.
Do what, Mike?
That's what the consultants told us in our first meeting. It was just a formality and things that we went through that.
And that's all I had on for item 7, so. At least wanted to throw those options out there,
Is it over?
the best we understand them to be.
Does anybody have anything?
One thing I'd say, it seems like we just need to truck along as normal until we have the OC approving some action. I mean, that's all we can really do.
And so I know it's probably more of an item 4 question, but I mean, is that something the BET would, I mean, recommend as establishing a protocol or procedure for the sheriff's office to reach out to the policy and governance committee, see if they could hold a special meeting, if they could? I mean,
I don't think that that's really within our purview, but I do think that you bringing it up around the table,
It
the
does
elected
help.
officials. I think that if Sheriff Johnson or if, Larry Stein or, whoever wants to reach out to the three commissioners and talk to them about it, that would be fine. We can also talk to our representatives on there. I know Joe had talked about this at the last meeting. Because I've talked to him about it and he's aware of the concern and the issue, but, I think individual offices can reach out, but I don't think we would make a recommendation for that. But I do agree with Christie, until something is done, we've got to assume that it's not gonna be, and that we're going to fund those employees, because they need to be paid. Anything else on item 7? Is there a motion to receive the information?
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 4, discussion possible action regarding establishing protocols, procedures, and schedule for BDT estimate of needs. I think this would probably, we could use 4 or 5, but we'll go ahead and do it here. At the conclusion of our last meeting, we had talked about getting with our elected officials and figuring out whether we want to do basically a ground zero approach like what we've done in years past, or if we want to just do a pure flat budget, which I don't recall us really doing before, or doing kind of the hybrid like what we did last year, which is take the overall approach that in general we're going to be flat, because we only have $279,000 to work with right now anyway, and we have the increased employer premiums that's going to soak maybe all of that, I don't know. But go through the budgets individually and look for those things that can come out. That way, somebody's quote unquote flat budget may actually be less than what they got the previous year, because maybe it was a one-time project that they needed the money for. Also looking at those budgets, there may be things that need to be funded immediately. If it's a new program that's going to require a contract and an encumbrance of those funds, or if it's a new position or whatever, we can then look at some one-offs here and there, potential funding extra into a department or 2 or 3 or whatever, and then having a list like what we did last year of items that we're going to come back and visit in September, if and when we have additional funds that are available to be allocated. So is there a consensus on which one of those directions to go?
I know our office is fine with the hybrid, which is kind of what I thought when I said flat budget, but.
Yeah.
Well, no, I knew that's what
Yeah.
I knew that's what you meant.
Yeah,
Just taking a look at,
us too.
and then just getting through September, the vote,
Mhm.
the ARPA questions, there's just.
A lot of things to
Mhm.
consider, but yeah, to go through department by department, because I do know there are some departments that have some immediate needs.
Yeah.
Whereas I know District 2 is willing to forego their needs till September. I know there's probably other departments that have immediate needs. We
Our
probably-
list is the same.
Yeah.
We don't need anything we don't need
Work
anything
along.
July 1.
Yeah, and I know Karen Kent reached out to me from HR about, they've got that, they're wanting to do the national background checks now. They're really concerned about that. It's only $2,000, but it's still $2,000 that they don't have in their budget, and they want to start doing that ASAP and not wait. So that's just an example of, some of the things as we go through that we may want to go ahead and make some adjustments here and there.
So I have 3 or 4 of those as well.
Yeah, and that,
ESRI.
the ESRI, the ESRI, yeah, for the countywide, that's something that we'll need to look at as well. So
Yeah,
there's a
And
few
new
of those.
positions.
That's one of them.
Yeah, and new positions and all of that, so. All right, is there a motion to take that approach this year?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So a flat hybrid?
Flat hybrid. We all know what we're saying.
Is that the
It's
official
electric.
term?
You're starting with your flat, and then if you need something
Sounds
July
like
1,
some
you better
type of-
speak up.
Exactly.
Exotic asp from Africa or something, you know, like some snake. Flat hybrid. All right, we got a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. That is the approach that we will take. And we'll delve in, starting next week at our regularly scheduled meeting. If that's okay with everybody. All right.
I have one question on that. So, the things that may be able to be taken out of the budget will just be from like July to September.
Well, I think the one thing that we have to assume when we pull it out is that it won't be budgeted in September because we don't know how much money we're going to have. We're not allocating that money yet. So that's where and why, like the $2,000 that I was talking about for HR for that particular project. I wouldn't want them going and saying, oh, well, you know, we know in our M&O we're going to have these expenses, but we've got all year to pay for them. So we'll go ahead and take on this new contract that's going to cost $2,000 because we'll get the money in September. So we don't really need the money now. We can stay flat. Well, the problem is if for whatever reason they're not approved funding for that extra $2,000, now they're going to be short. So as we go through and we're pulling stuff out, I think we have to take the approach that there's a good possibility that this will not be funded. So if we are adding a position, I think we need to make sure that there's funding for that position. Does that make sense? That's just my thought. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but if, you know, say Mike wants a new position and we go and he's like, but I can go ahead and wait, and he hires that position come July 1, if he doesn't have any turnover throughout the year and all your employees are there, yeah, you can handle that additional salary for July, August, and September, but come June, you're going to be short if we don't give you extra money in September. So if you're not budgeted for it on July 1, I would not recommend going out and doing whatever it is that's on the September list. Because just because it's on the September list doesn't mean that it's going to be funded.
Can I make a comment too?
Yes.
So we pulled in the budget from April 30th, and there's like departments that got maybe a one-time funding, like IT, they got like $270,000 that they don't need for the next year. So those are amounts we're gonna look at that can come off instead of adopting the same budget from this year.
Would we have a better idea of like lapse funds as well?
We always do it September.
September.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we may have a little better idea on lapse funds now versus when the estimate of needs were completed, but I mean, there's still, you know, some unknowns and stuff. Do what?
So the revenues are set for now.
Yeah, and then he said like on these highlighted amounts, we can go lower than the current budget because he's not expecting that we need to stay at the higher level.
All right, anything else? All right, if not, I don't think we need anything on 5 or 6. If everybody's comfortable with having our next discussion related to budget to be our regular meeting, which is next Tuesday. We're all good with that. That's already scheduled, so. All right, citizens participation. Anybody sign up? No. Board comments. District 3?
No.
I'm sorry, District 2.
You looked at me.
I know,
you were
I
talking about.
know.
No, thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, I'm good.
District 2. District 3. Clerk? Treasurer? Court clerk?
None.
Assessor?
Okay.
Alright, I don't have anything either. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh,
No.
hang on.
I have just one question, is there anything, any items that I need to put on for Tuesday's agenda? Does anybody know of anything except for the regular stuff?
I don't know. If so, just be sure to email if you've got an agenda item, that needs to go on there. So, if you would remind me, I've got some adjustments that juvenile wants to make on their, stuff that's on estimated needs. I just don't want to forget. So,